According to our latest Joe Debtor study, female debtors saw their average unsecured debt increase 6.5%, while their male counterparts only had a less than 1% increase in their unsecured debt load. What's going on here? Well, the panel has assembled and we'll find out starting right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Okay, welcome panel. You are all returning guests, so we don't need long introductions. Everyone knows who you are, but let's at least get your name on the record. Let's go east to west. Maureen, who are you?
Maureen Parent, a licensed insolvency trustee in Canada, Ottawa.
Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Kwan. I'm the licensed insolvency trustee of the Mississauga region.
Rebecca.
I'm Rebecca Martin, and I'm the licensed insolvency trustee in Windsor and area.
Excellent. So we have 3 licensed insolvency trustees here. So let's start with some facts. Facts, numbers. We'll get to the whole opinion stuff later. But I want each of you to give me a fact that compares our average male debtor to our average female debtor. And for people who are watching, Ted and I did a podcast going through the entirety of our Joe Debtor Hoyes Michaelis bankruptcy study, which is something we release every year. We talked about a number of different factors, tax debt, student loan debt, and so on. Today, I want to focus specifically on the differences between our male debtors and our female debtors. So let's start with some facts. Rebecca, you first.
So males owe on average $53,000, a little bit over $53,000 in unsecured debt. And it's just under 14% more than the average female debtor.
Interesting. Jennifer Kwan, tell me a fact.
So female debtors saw their average unsecured debt increase 6.5%, while their counterpart, male debtors' unsecured debt increased only by 0.7%.
So that's kind of interesting, and that's the fact I mentioned in the intro. So males have more debt, but females are catching up. So Maureen, tell me some other place where females are catching up.
Well, another area where females are catching up. 10 years ago, 42% of our clients were female, 58% were male. Now it's almost a 50-50 split. The percentage of females filing insolvency is now 49.3%, the highest rate since we began this study in 2011.
Equality. So there you go. We have reached equality. So now, I am of the view, this may be controversial, but I am of the view that we humans are more alike than different. And as Maureen said, our clients are evenly split, 50-50 male-female, was not always that way. The average age of our female clients is 42.7 years old. For males, it's about the same, 42 years old. 38% of females have payday loans. 37% of males have payday loans. So again, about the same. But each of you have just highlighted some differences. So I'd like to talk about why that is. Now, one difference is that of our clients, the average income for our male debtors is $2,700 a month. And we're talking take-home pay. So this is the actual money you get to take home with you after taxes and everything. For our female debtors, the average take-home pay is around $2,500 a month. So around 9% less. So Rebecca, I'm going to start with you. In your experience from your clients, and this isn't some, accurate statistical study, I'm just asking for your impressions here. What have you observed? Why is it that your female clients on average have lower take-home pay than your male clients?
One reason is the females tend to be the primary caregiver. Majority of clients I've seen have the dependents with them, compared with maybe only a third with the male. Maybe a third are single parents as compared to only a small percentage for males, probably less than 10%. Because of all this disparity, in the event of a marital separation, the female is going to be at greater financial risk, especially, and then in the past 2 years with COVID, talking to clients, more often than not, it's always a female that's staying home with the child if someone is sick or schools are closed. Or even last week in Windsor, we had 3 days where the schools were closed due to snow. It was a female staying home with the kids. And then you combine all those with then trying to get into the real estate market, even the rental market, which I know is one of the favorite topics here, combined with all that, now trying to get a place to rent after marital separation.
Yeah, and you're right. 43% of our female clients have dependents versus only 29% for males. 26% of our female clients are lone parents versus only 9% for males. So again, it is statistically accurate what you just said, that the whole childcare end of things tends to disproportionately fall on females, which of course has some financial ramifications. So, okay, Maureen, give me your thoughts on any of that.
So these thoughts are kind of more not income driven, but more expense driven. I think it's quite common for the women to do the shopping for the family. I know there's always those cliches about shopping and women are always shopping, but it's really for the family. I know my husband will do the groceries, but then I have to go out and get all the staples because he doesn't shop in the same way I do. I shop in a way that kind of supports the family unit, make sure we have all of those needs so that we can function in the household. I think the women are also more likely to arrange for sports and being involved in that way. So I think that there's the expenditure is there for the women because of that need to take care of the family.
And just in the interest of full disclosure here, each of you have a husband. Each of you have a kid. I mean, in Jennifer's case, the kid isn't actually born yet, but that's hopefully does not happen during this podcast, but is imminent. So you're giving your perspective as now, married people in a family situation. So.
Yeah.
So, Maureen, you mentioned this whole area of expenditure, and I get what you're saying. When my kids were young, I was not the one going out and buying clothes for them. Even though both of my kids were boys, I would have no clue how to do any of that kind of shopping. I can barely buy my own pair of jeans. So I understand that. Explain to me, and I'm just going to throw this open, maybe Rebecca, you jump in first and then anyone else can. What is the pink tax?
Well, it's basically the difference between buying a product specifically designed for a male and a product specifically designed for a female. So a few days ago, I was just looking for a plain, basic white t-shirt. Nothing fancy, no writing, no frills, nothing. The men's t-shirt was, I believe, about $5 more than a female t-shirt. So basically just 2 sleeves, a body, that's it, nothing. And that was it was more expensive for the females than it was for the males. And I think the males even came in a 3-pack. It was still cheaper than the women's coming in a 2-pack.
That doesn't make sense because I would assume that men in general are bigger. So isn't there more cloth in a t-shirt for a male?
Yeah. Well, you'd think. I mean, women's t-shirts tend to be a little bit more tapered in the waist, but I can't see that being justification for the price difference. And you also used to see it a lot too in dry cleaning. You take a women's Oxford blouse, you take a men's Oxford shirt. The men's is cheaper. And the argument was, well, the women's is frillier. Well, no, it's not. It's a plain shirt. But that costs a couple of dollars more to dry clean than the men's shirt of equivalent quality.
Cool. Maureen, thoughts?
Right. So, having shopped for my boys and myself and stuff, I do think there is some closing on the pink tax. There is a closing gap on that because I've seen where t-shirts are pretty much the same. But I've also seen where sales for men's clothes are a better sale than a similar type of product for a woman. But the other thing though, is that women are more likely to do more with their hair. So their haircuts cost more. But where the pink tax comes in is I've had to pay more for a simple little trim than a guy going in for a normal haircut. I'm like, you took off 1 inch, you did nothing else, and I still had to pay more. So I still think it's there, but I do believe it's closing that gap. I would say though, my way of counteracting that is I've chosen to do low lights instead of highlights because it's cheaper and better for my hair, and I don't have to go as often. And that is a way that I've kind of mitigated the costs of my choice, is to extend the time I go back. And I also find that women do tend to spend more on self-care. So that also seems to be like a pink tax, but I think if my husband went out and bought cream, he'd pay the same. And my way of getting beyond or dealing with that high cost of skincare is I put a lot less on my palm, maybe a little bit of water, and I spread it out thinner because it really bugs me to spend so much money on something that I think they're probably overcharging me for.
And I have no idea what highlights and lowlights meant, but but I do see what you're saying. I go to a place where they cut hair for males and females, and I'm in and out of there in 25 minutes. And now, you can't see because I'm wearing my headphones, but I do not have the fanciest haircut in the world, so maybe that's why. But okay, so there are differences in the costs of certain things and certain services. You've mentioned a few of them: dry cleaning, haircuts, and so on. I want to delve a little bit more into this whole area. So let's bring Jennifer into this. Now, everybody knows, you trained and qualified as a lawyer. Now you're a licensed insolvency trustee. So you worked for one of the biggest accounting firms in the country before leaving to join us. And in fact, I think, Rebecca, you worked for a big accounting firm. Maureen, you worked for a medium-sized one before coming here. So it's very clear from our study that our female clients have lower take-home pay than our male clients. And Rebecca explained some of the reasons for that. I want to go to practical advice here. So I don't want to get into the debate about why it is, how it is, what's going on, because I can't solve that. I want to know, what should I do about it? So I want you to give some advice to the females who are listening. And I think this is also probably advice that's going to be completely applicable to males as well. So Jennifer, tell me about wage gaps advice. Give us some advice here.
Okay, I have a huge list, but I'm going to selectively choose a few.
Well, you haven't spoken yet, so you get to have the floor. No,
Yay!
Go for
All
it.
right. So there are certainly, advice that I want to share that could be done first in the workplace and also at home. So outside of the workplace, which will, lessen the gap, in my opinion, and based on research. So the number one thing I do want to talk about is salary transparency. So, as a fresh graduate 12 years ago, secrecy of salaries is like the norm in a workplace, right? But what I quickly realized was the lack of transparency of salary information was a huge issue, and it created much more anxiety than comfort. So and I don't know, I guess the newer generation, we do talk about wages way more. We do ask our, close colleagues like, hey, how much do you make? Because we had the same education, we had the same experience. And I think that is quite important.
Well, let me stop you there, Jennifer. And I want to ask, Maureen and Rebecca, if they agree with that comment. Because I remember when I started, and it was more than 12 years ago, it was 1987. And the year I started at the big accounting firm, there were 10 of us who were hired as the junior rookie accountant, 6 females, 4 males. So we were already, more gender neutral back then. And we all got paid exactly the same amount because we all talked about it. It was $20,000. We got $20,000 a year. That was our starting salary. And so I've always talked to my buddies about, hey, how much are you making? What are you making? Whatever. And so I've always just thought, well, that's common. That's something you talk about. Maureen or Rebecca, do you agree or disagree with what Jennifer just said about, talking amongst yourselves about how much you're making and therefore having transparency? Maureen, why don't you start?
I certainly didn't experience that. Two of my previous jobs, it was let known that if you spoke about your salary, that you could be terminated. So it was very much discouraged, which set off my alarm bells thinking, they're probably not paying people fairly. But I definitely believe that transparency and the ability to communicate about your salary is important and shouldn't be stifled.
And I agree it's important because you need to make sure that there's equality. But I've never been in a situation where I have shared my salary or asked anyone else their salary. Just to me, and I guess, sigh, it's a generational thing. Thanks, Jennifer. Really appreciate that. It's for me, when I grew up through the corporate stuff, it was just something we never talked about. You had your annual review with your boss. I've never had a female boss. He would tell you then how much of a raise you were getting, why or why not. You would leave and you wouldn't talk to anyone else. What did you get? What did you make? Because there was a chart, but you never knew where you were on the chart. So, and that's just something that I've just dealt with.
Okay, so back to Jennifer then. So salary transparency, Jennifer is a big believer in knowing what's going on. I kind of agree with Jennifer on that one. And yeah, I don't care what the boss says. I'm pretty sure as an employee, I can talk about whatever I want. Whether I choose to share it or not, I guess, is entirely up to me. But if I'm not going to share with my coworkers, well, then I guess they're not going to share with me. So I don't know what's going on. So, okay, Jennifer, back to your list then.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's important to know what your peers are making, because then it's difficult to know if you're being compensated fairly for the merits and I guess the role that you have within the institution. So I think promoting open, honest discussions about compensation within the workplace shouldn't be frowned upon, but like not super encouraged either. You keep it discreet, right? But professionally, but I think it's important. Another one is research your market value. There's so many sites out there. Like, for example, for me, when I became a fresh grad, I checked, how much does a junior litigator make, as in Quebec or in Ontario? There are sites like Glassdoor, which is pretty popular, and there are people within a company that will post like how much they make as a 1 to 2 year junior lawyer or 3 to 5 year experience. So then you have an idea or a range when going into like the negotiating room to talk about like how much you're worth. So you know when someone's lowballing you or if someone's compensating you fairly. So that's another one.
And I think that's a good one too, because that is something that, old people like me, because I'm the oldest one on this call, I believe. When I was a young man in 1987, we didn't have the internet, let alone all these other sites that had that kind of stuff on it. So, and that's not something where you have to worry about confidentiality, because I'm looking to see what everyone else is doing. So, okay, that kind of makes sense to me. Why would you not take advantage of those things? Now, I don't know how accurate they are because I've never tried it out, but okay, that kind of makes sense. So, okay, so what you're saying, Jennifer, number one, compare yourself amongst your peers at the company. That obviously only works if you're at a company that has peers. If you're the only employee, then I guess that wouldn't work. And then the second one would be find out what the market looks like. Give us some more advice.
Okay, like vocalize what you want. And me, I'll let you know that I was a really shy person to begin with. And then I guess law school really changed me. And you really have to vocalize what you want. And this is a generalization, but men tend to be more bolder in their demands for raises or, in their demands for a promotion. And I understood that at an early, like 20s kind of age, working at law firms. So I made it the norm for me to like negotiate like a man. I just walked into the office and I said, hey, I think I'm really good at this. I think I deserve like a $10,000 raise. I would throw in a number knowing it was ridiculous and, but that I was certainly worth it. If you're not worth it, like, I don't know if you could really ask for 10,000, but I'll let you use your judgment for that. But you do have to advocate for yourself. No one else would.
And how did that go for you?
Honestly, Doug, I'm here now, aren't I?
That's true. That's exactly right. Right.
I think it has worked in my favor a lot. I don't know, like maybe, just making it vocal, like just vocalizing that this is what I want to be. This is the position I want to get at eventually, and just letting the partner or the person hiring know what your intentions are. And if you fit it, then you definitely will get it.
Okay, so Maureen or Rebecca, any comments on that?
Well, I've certainly had an experience where I felt like I was worth a lot more and I wasn't getting paid more. And so what I did was, because I wasn't going to be paid what I felt I was worth and it was not going to change, I started to study and become industry specific studies so that I could improve my position. So I had leverage to go in and say, I have more skills and you need to pay me more. And then if he didn't, I had decided that I was just going to leave.
Yes, because that is your ultimate power. You vote with your feet. Rebecca, any thoughts on that? Vocalizing what you want. You're a shy and reserved person. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think Jennifer is bang on that. There's no reason not to say, here's what I'm worth. I've done this research. Here's what the market is worth. This is what I want. I guess suppose the worst they're going to say is no. But if you have the skills to be able to say, you know what, if you're not going to value me and appreciate based on what I'm doing, well, you know what, there's a store down the street or this place or that place. I'm going to look at making a move then. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
I would say though, and it sounds like we're being, it's very easy. You just move. I mean, my transition took years, right? It was, I knew my intention. I knew what I wanted, but I had to stay where I was for years as I put my plan in place so that I could move. So it's not a quick thing, but when you have a plan, it really helps you handle it better.
And
Exactly.
Part of your plan was, you mentioned education. So you weren't born as a licensed insolvency trustee, I'm guessing.
Right. Exactly.
And obviously in our business, for those who don't know, it takes many years to become a licensed insolvency trustee. And that's after you're finished, university, finished becoming an accountant, lawyer, whatever it is. So you're right. It's not just, I'm going to flip a switch and boom, I'm going to do something different. But having that plan is obviously pretty important. So, okay. So Jennifer, we're at salary transparency, market value, vocalize. Anything else on your list?
I guess this one is harder to do because it does involve like the employer's cooperation. So, as my colleagues have mentioned, women do take on additional responsibilities outside of the workplace when it comes to childcare or even taking care of their elderly parents, right? We're just a nurturing kind of, we're the nurturing sex. And this can result in women working for lower paid jobs that give them more flexibility and working part-time and such like that. So I think employers making a commitment to foster a work-life balance, creating like a flexible and more welcoming work environment for women will attract and retain women who are hardworking mothers and who could give it their all. So I think this one is a big one. It's not an easy one where you just walk into your boss's office and demand a raise. This one is more like an institutionalized, like it's going to take time. So that's one of them.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to your vocalizing thing. So it's vocalizing, here's how much I want you to pay me, but it's also, here are the other considerations that I need. Mm-hmm. And, putting it all on the table. So, okay, that makes sense. What else is on your list?
Last one, promise, Doug. Okay. So I think this other, my last practical advice is something that could take place at home. So like division of labor at home. I have a career, but my husband also has a career. And of course, women do inevitably take a back seat so that their jobs are more able to be on call at home for their children, including their spouses. So more and more, I feel in my like generation of like people having children now, the non-birthing parent is much more involved, right? It's not like a clear-cut division of you stay home and take care of the kid and the household while I go bring money into the household. I think it's more like an equal divide almost. So change does have to come at home, and you do have to talk to your spouse or, your partner to make that happen and to make it easier for you to transition. For example, I'm not planning to take a long maternity leave because I really enjoy my job and my husband probably doesn't enjoy it as much as I do. So our understanding was, okay, I'll probably take the first 6 months or a little bit more, and then you'll take the next. And that helps.
And I like the way you alluded to your spouse as like one of the children, which I think is an app. I've never.
I insinuated that.
I read between the lines there, and I think all women will likely agree with what you said there. So okay, Maureen, yes.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to jump in with kind of a little bit of practical advice for someone who's advocating for themselves, because it was very difficult for me. And luckily I met people who were like, oh yeah, you know what? I know you're asking for that. And you say that's what you're worth, but we actually think you're worth a bit more. So I was very grateful for that, but that doesn't always happen. So I think when you're advocating for yourself, it's really important to practice and kind of do the what ifs. What if my boss says this? What if my boss says that? And kind of have a preparation for how you'll respond. Because when you're nervous about advocating for yourself, you want to kind of prepare and know that you can handle whatever's going to come at you. So you want to have your strategies in place. And when you're doing that, you're obviously going to look to the people that you know, but it's also possible that the people that you know have similar reservations. So you want to extend that and look outside and maybe even talk to people already in the profession, or even go on the internet and look for support there, with the warning of, if it's fear-based advice, move on. You want to have advice that says, hey, if your boss says no, this is what you can do to help yourself. You want to always have the advice you're getting to be something that emboldens you and doesn't put fear into you.
Well, and you're kind of addressing the whole issue of a mentor or a support system or whatever. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager thinking about becoming an accountant, I went and talked to an older guy who was an accountant. Okay, what's it like? How does it work? What's the deal? That may be more difficult if you're looking to talk to people, if you're kind of, breaking new ground and there aren't people who've come before you that you can talk to. But okay, how does one do that? And I think you can get advice from both males and females. There's no exclusion on that, but obviously if you're looking for specific advice, I mean, I guess I'll throw that open to anyone. Is that something that you have done as well? Kind of have your own little, support network or people you talk to, or is that something that's not done?
Well, I can speak to that. So when I was in my first year practicing as a lawyer, my boss, like the partner at the law firm, told me, you don't want to be doing this. Trust me. You want to get out. Go get your license and to become a trustee. And I was like, what's a trustee? I did not know what that was. So he's the one who really encouraged me to not be a lawyer forever and lose all my hair. So that was really important. And then I did, due to his introduction, I did meet other women in the industry who were once lawyers who transitioned to become a licensed insolvency trustee. And honestly, without their help, I wouldn't be here. That's for sure. Because as you said, Doug, I have legal training. I don't have any accounting background, and I needed to immerse myself into this new world of accountancy, numbers, and things like that. And this network or these mentors have helped me get exposure to corporate and personal accounting and just taxes and things that I was not aware of. So I would have never achieved what I have today without their help. So that's so important. Mentorship is so important.
And isn't that all come back to vocalizing too? Because I assume you had to actually pick up the phone. This was in the days before Zoom, I guess, where you had to pick up the phone and say, hey, Mary, you're a trustee. I'd like to talk to you about what it is. Is that essentially what you were doing, making cold calls?
Exactly. So I saw someone who was on a panel actually in a really large conference, and I, put on my big girl pants and I just walked up to her and I said, hey, I'm a really young lawyer and I do want to transition to become a licensed insolvency trustee. Would you take me on? And she was really busy. I had no idea. And she said, of course I would. And then that's how it all started. And
wow, interesting. So putting on your big girl pants. I like that. I also like the bit about losing your hair, which would solve the problem of the hairdressers that we talked about earlier, but that's a different issue. So I had a whole bunch of stuff on my list, but you guys kept talking and talking and talking. So I don't think we're going to, it's okay. So I don't think we're going to get to the rest of the topics, but I had on my list to talk about student loan debt, which is yet another area where, females have more student loan debt than males do. And I think we kind of covered why that is. It's, kind of what Rebecca said at the beginning. It's about, being, having other responsibilities and making it a little bit more difficult. So I think we'll skip over that topic because I think it's similar to what we've talked about. Let's end then with practical advice. So, and we've done the whole show on practical advice, so I think that's good. And Jennifer, you certainly gave us a very good list. Is there anything else on the practical side of things that we haven't addressed? In fact, there was one word, I can't remember if it was Maureen who mentioned it or not. It was the word leverage. So I really liked that word. And so who wants to emphasize that point and explain what exactly we're talking about with leverage there?
Well,
sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Rebecca.
No, what I was going to mention is just to kind of use caution, because I've seen this so many times with clients. They only have a joint bank account. The credit cards are all in the female's name, even though it was the male that used them. They separate. We all know who now is stuck with the debt. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with having your own bank account. You're protected. First of all, you have some money for whatever you need it for, but then you're also protecting the family money. So put your paycheck, your child tax, your whatever income you have coming in your own bank account. You can always have a joint bank account for the family expenses. If your partner is suggesting, well, hey, let's put everything on your own personal credit card, it's like, well, hang on a second here. No. First of all, I guess you have to talk about the fact is this something we need? And, if there's an issue of why can't we put it on your credit card, then then there's a whole other issue they have to deal with. But it's something to be aware of. Kind of like Jennifer was just saying, advocate for yourself. It's like, no, we're not going to put this and this and this and this on the credit card that is solely in my name.
Yeah, and something like an RRSP, well, you can each have an RSP. You don't have to load one of them up or just the other one of them up. But I mean, our advice has always been, and everybody on this call has given this advice many times, is have your own bank account and have your own bank account at a bank you don't own any money to, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. I don't think it's a good idea to plan for the inevitable separation. But on the other hand, having a bank account in your name already set up, already ready to go is not a bad idea, not just for separation reasons. What happens if your bank stops loving you and you need a new account somewhere? It's not a bad idea to have something like that already ready to go and understand how all that works. So Maureen, back to you on the leverage point then.
So I was kind of alluding to that earlier, where I was in a position where I wasn't being paid what I deserved, right? So the leverage comes in where your worth, you need to know you have a point of power. So you need to know you're able to leave. And if you can't leave right away, you're strategizing to leave. You need to be able to advocate and say, you know what, I'm showing up to work on time. I'm doing my job. Like, those are basic things that surprisingly aren't necessarily common in the workforce. But if you're doing those little things, you have more leverage because the employer likes you more. And then if you can get studies in industry specific courses and stuff like that, then do that as well. So leverage is putting yourself in a position where your boss doesn't want to lose you. And it's also the same with the joint bank account or the separate debt. In a way, that's kind of leverage, because you're like, no, wait a minute. I'm not tied to you. I'm married to you and I'm choosing to be with you, but I'm not trapped because of the financial situation, right? So you want to have it on all layers of your life so that you never feel trapped and you always have something to go towards. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense. And each of you increased your leverage by becoming qualified as a licensed insolvency trustee. Each of you were licensed insolvency trustees before you came to work at Hoyes Michaelis, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe you all qualified somewhere else and then, called me up or called Ted up and say, okay, I got this piece of paper. You need me. That's my recollection. I don't recall actively going out and looking for you. I believe you advocated for yourself and came to me. Am I remembering correctly? I mean, Rebecca, you've been here for a decade and a half. I can't remember. You were 20 when you joined. So
there we go.
It's been a
long.
I think
that was exactly the way it was with me. I think I'm coming up 18 years, 19 years. But yeah, I got my license, and I think you and Ted were literally the first people that I called.
As you should be. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And, I think, Maureen, in your case, it was the same. Jennifer, I can't remember. Did you come and visit me in my Toronto office? Am I remembering correctly? Or
Yeah. So I think you actually, Doug, did the mock oral board exam for me. So you mentored me and you said you saw how lovely I was and said, if you ever want to go into personal insolvency, you give me a call. So I said, all right.
And sure enough, you did. So, well, and you're right. In our industry, before you become a trustee, the final step is you have to appear before the oral board of examiners. and I am a member of the Oral Board of Examiners. The year that I did that for you was probably the year I wasn't on the official board, which I was able to do it. But certainly Ted Michaelis and all of our trustees have done that. And that's one of the ways that we find out who's good in the industry before they even qualify, so that we can bring them on board. I'm sure I did a mock oral for Rebecca as well.
Yeah.
In fact, I explicitly remember that. And I explicitly remember one of the pieces of advice I gave you. What was it, Rebecca? Do you remember the specific advice I gave you?
I just remember that being you gave me a lot of advice, just let me say that way.
Because the specific advice I remember giving you, and obviously we're going back, like you said, a couple of decades here, was pound your fist on the table.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, as Jennifer kind of alluded to too, and this is not just a female thing, males are the same way, they kind of get intimidated by the process. So I said, okay, be extra forceful. And that's kind of probably one of the themes we've discussed here today. So I think, Jennifer, you came and met me before the pandemic started, and then you joined us kind of as the pandemic was started. So we were actually able to meet in person at the beginning. So, okay, well, Jennifer, I will give the final word to you. You've already given us a fantastic list here, but is there any other final advice you would like to wrap up with before you disappear on maternity leave?
No, I think just speak for yourself, and you do have to ask, because no one's just going to give it out to you. So as a woman, and if you know you're worth it and you're actually qualified and you're actually good at your job, just ask for it and see what the employer says. Like, you have to ask before it's given to you.
Yeah, people aren't just going to give you stuff. And that's why building up the leverage, okay, I've taken these courses, I've qualified in this industry, I've got these other things. So, hey, if this employer doesn't value me, then I'm phoning Doug Hoyes. That's kind of how all the stories have gone. So excellent. So Maureen Parent, Rebecca Martin, Jennifer Kwan, thank you for being here today. Everything we talked about will be in the show notes on YouTube, including links to our Hoyes Michaelis Joe Debtor bankruptcy study that has a specific section in it on what we see from our female and our male debtors. So if you want to see where the math is coming from, it's all there. So thank you all for being here. That is our show for today. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, same deal. Whatever podcasting app you're on, subscribe so you get the show every week. That is our show for today. Thank you for listening. I'm Doug Hoyes for the panel that was Debt Free in 30.